Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to go over midpoints in this quick video. Midpoints is pretty easy. Next class, you guys are going to have a quiz on distance formula, Pythagorean theorem, and midpoint. So midpoint is just a quick addition to that quiz. If you guys have any trouble, I'm going to have a Meet link open for most of the day today. So if you have questions, you're not sure how to do this, something's not making sense, please jump on the call. You have to make sure that you're feeling prepared before a quiz. So if any of this is confusing when you do the classwork, please reach out. So the midpoint of a segment is a point that divides the segment into two congruent segments. A lot of times on paper, in order to do problems, you're going to have to draw this out. So you just draw a line with 3 points on it, and then they're going to say something to you like this, and you have to be able to put the points in the right place. The midpoint M, that means the point in the middle should be called M. PQ, so the midpoint M of segment PQ. So they're saying midpoint M is between P and Q, so that's why M's in the middle. It doesn't matter where you put P and Q as long as that M is in the middle. I always just go in order, but it doesn't matter what you do there. When we have a midpoint of PQ in between points P and Q, such that what it means is that PM is congruent or equal to MQ. So I'm going to put those little tick marks because like we talked about before, that represents congruency. So if those are equal, say I called this 20, that means this has to be 20, which means the whole thing has to be 40. Okay, so that's just a quick example in numbers. So let's go over a problem where we're using some algebra. So it wants us to find x, pq, and qr, and pr. That's 4 different things they want in our answer. When that happens, I like to put them over here. X equals, pq equals, qr equals, pr equals, because I like to box my answer and name all of it. So I'm just going to put it over there ready to answer. They want us to answer that if Q is the midpoint of PR. So I'm going to draw my line. Q is the midpoint, so I'm putting in the middle, and the segment is PR. Now I can label with this algebra they gave me here. So PQ right here is 6x minus 7, and QR right here is 5x plus 1. We know that these two pieces are congruent. They're equal to each other because that's a midpoint. So what I can do now is take these two expressions and set them equal to each other to find x. So 6x minus 7 equals 5x plus 1. Now I'm going to solve this equation. So I'm going to combine my like terms by subtracting 5x first. That leaves me with x minus 7 equals 1. To continue solving, I'm going to add 7 to both sides, so x is 8. Now, I've solved that x is 8. I'm not done. I got to find PQ, QR, and PR. So PQ is 6x minus 7. So I'm going to go ahead and just plug this 8 in. So I need 6 times 8 minus 7. 6 times 8 is 48. Minus 7 gives us 41. If that is equal to 41, that means that this also has to be 41 because they are congruent. So PQ is 41, QR is 41. PR is this whole segment. So I don't even have to. You could do this math out for each one if you wanted to, but you can also just think logically about it. If that's 41, that has to be 41, which means the whole thing has to be 82. Where I'm getting 82 from, I'm just adding 41 and 41 to get 82 because this whole segment is those two combined. Okay. Now I'm going to go over the midpoint formula because this is midpoint when we're given expressions. This is midpoint when we're given points. Okay. So there's 2 different times you're going to see it. You also need to know the midpoint formula. So the midpoint formula in a coordinate plane, if the coordinates of the endpoints of segment are x1, y1, and x2, y2, then the coordinates of the midpoint of the segment are as follows. So this right here is your midpoint. Kind of like in distance formula when we had that whole formula equals D. This is the same thing. This is equal to the midpoint. So xm, ym, that's just the x and y value of your midpoint, the point value of your midpoint. So we have to do the same thing like we did in distance formula. We have to label our points x1, y1, x2, y2, plug them into this formula, and find our midpoint. So here's an example. Find the coordinates of C, the midpoint of TU, if the endpoints are as follows. So first thing is label the endpoints. These are our two endpoints. I'm going to call it x1, y1, x2, y2. Now, guys, you always got to be careful because they said C is the midpoint. Always make sure they didn't give you C, because if they give you C, this is a different story, which you'll see momentarily. So I did number one. I labeled my endpoints. Now I'm going to rewrite the formula. So my formula is x1 plus x2 over 2, comma, y1 plus y2 over 2 equals xm, ym. So I'm now going to start to plug in the information. So I did number 2. Now I'm going to plug in the information. So x1 is -2 plus my x2 is 8 divided by 2. My y1 is 4. My y2 is 10 divided by 2. Now I'm going to simplify. Okay, I'm just going to do it a little down here, so some room. -2 plus 8 is 6. 4 plus 10 is 14. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 14 divided by 2 is 7. This is my midpoint. This is my xm, ym. This is my midpoint. Okay, so this is the midpoint between those two endpoints. All right, I'm going to flip around to the other side. And I'm going to go over one from a graph. So if I'm finding the coordinates of the midpoint of xy, so this is a graph. So remember, this is the x-axis and this is the y. The first thing you got to do in a problem like this is name those points. So I have x and y are my 2 points. So this x value is on -2 because that's the x value is -2, and it doesn't go up or down, so that's -2, 0. I'm going to label that x1, y1. Y is 3, -5. x1, I'm sorry, x2, y2. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug it into my midpoint formula. So the midpoint formula says add the x's. -2 plus 3, divide by 2. Add the y's, 0 and -5, divided by 2. So just pointing this out, I added a -5. Addition next to subtraction is just going to be subtraction. So that's -5. Now I'm going to simplify. -2 plus 3 is 1/2, 1 over 2. And 0 minus 5 is -5 over 2. I'm okay with you leaving this as your midpoint answer. I'm also okay if you change it to decimals, so that would be 0.5 and -2.5. Either one works with me. Okay. This last problem here is a little tricky, so it's kind of a challenge, but it's actually super easy. It sounds tricky and it looks scary, but it's not. So you have the midpoint of JR, so our line is JR, and the midpoint is W, and that midpoint's at -4, +4 and -6. J is 3, -4. What is the coordinates of R? So this is different because we can't do the midpoint formula necessarily because we don't know it. Okay. Now, one thing you can think of is first think of the x values. This is how I do these problems. It makes it super easy. So think of the x values. So it goes from 3 to 4, and then it needs to go to the r x value. Okay. Now, If it goes from 3 to 4, that's a distance that should be equivalent to this distance. So from 3 to 4, we only move one measure. So this also has to move only one measure. So that means our x value of r has to be 5. Okay. Now I can do that exact same idea with my y value. So for my y values, I go from -4 to -6. And then I don't know my y value for r. So I'm subtracting, to go from -4 to -6, I'm subtracting 2. This has to be equivalent, so I have to subtract 2 again. So -6 minus 2 would give me -8. So that means -8 has to be my y value for r. All right, I hope that this was helpful. If you guys have any questions, please reach out. You do have a quiz on this next class, but we are going to do a review before the quiz of midpoint, distance, and Pythagorean, so don't stress too much. But yeah, you guys should be good with this. It's not super hard. Just make sure you be careful of your sign errors and stuff like that and use a calculator. All right, have a great asynchronous day.